Hi, my name is Casey, and today I wanted to make a little video about the impact of internet bots on public perception, especially in regards to Zionism and Israel. So I actually wrote an essay about this topic for college a couple months ago, and I meant to turn it into a video essay, but long-form content just made me burnt out. I could not accomplish that. But I'm here now, so TikTok is a little more low effort. I'm using the skills I have in whatever way I can for the cause. Work with me. So when I started writing the essay for school, it was a research paper, and we just had to choose any topic relating to technology. And I wasn't even gonna go like political with it. I just was doing internet bots on public perception overall. But as I was conducting my research, Zionism just so happened to rear its ugly head, of course. So I was afraid to get too political for school, but I mean, it literally just naturally came up in the research that I was doing. So I'm not gonna just not talk about it, you know? So if my video here made it to your little slice of the TikTok algorithm, then there's a good chance that you're pretty internet savvy. You already know what a bot is, right? Like a bot account, spam account, you know, scammers, the Nigerian princess in your inbox, whatever. The technical definition of a bot refers to an automated account that has been programmed to run internet scripts on its own, meaning it can engage with content on its own, it can post content on its own, and it can mimic human writing patterns. According to techreport.com, bots contributed towards 47.4% of all internet traffic in the year 2022. And that was like a couple years ago now, so it's definitely over 50% at this point. Now, I always thought that all of these bot accounts were like super obvious. You know, whenever you get a sketchy DM, I can immediately tell it's fishy. I'm sure you guys can too, unless you're like somebody's elderly grandmother. It's pretty easy to not get catfished by a bot. Or so you would think. Like, not very high tech, not very convincing, unless you have very poor media literacy. That's what you would think, right? But unfortunately, that is not the case anymore, because that was years ago. Now we have chatbot technology that has grown exponentially since then. AI language model capabilities are growing rapidly, and media literacy is falling rapidly. So these two together, it's just becoming exponentially harder for people to determine whether they're even speaking to a real person online anymore. And the scope of these bots now goes far beyond somebody just trying to scam you out of a few dollars. So first, we need to understand the mechanics of how these bot accounts even have the capability of affecting the conversation in the first place, right? So studies in the past have suggested that hyperpartisan bots, which are highly politicized, biased bot accounts, don't tend to have much of an influence over people in the grand scheme of things, because the individuals who interact with that type of content tend to be already radicalized towards it themselves. However, a recent article published by Applied Network Science has found that these hyperpartisan bots are significant in their influence, not directly on a bot-to-human basis, but rather by elusively shaping the type of posts that tend to show up the most often on the platform as a whole. Here's a quote from Pescetelli and others in Applied Network Science. They say, "Our model shows that bots' influence is magnified when we account for indirect influence via the recommender system or other intermediary agents. This striking result indicates that a single bot can have much more robust and lasting effect beyond individuals it directly interacts with. This finding seems to suggest that studies focusing only on the direct influence, bots' influence on people they directly interacted with, might have underestimated the actual capacity of a bot to bias population opinion dynamics." So what the hell does that mean? Basically, they're talking about the algorithm and how you might be able to tell on an individual basis if you come across a post that just seems fishy and misinformation-y, you might be able to tell that that's a bot. But if that type of bot content has been flooded onto the social media platform all day, the algorithm is just gonna say, oh, this must be a popular topic. So it creates artificial popularity for some topic or opinion, which then generates real popularity for it just by the fact that the algorithm picks it up, whether it's coming from bot accounts or real accounts, it doesn't matter. So not only does that affect how often a certain topic might start popping up on your For You page, but it's also going to affect you psychologically if it seems like the entire internet is for or against a certain opinion. A simplified example might be if you're seeing all this hype online for a movie, and then once you go see it, you think it sucks, you might think twice about going home and posting about how bad it sucked if you know that, or if you think that everyone else on the internet is disagreeing with you. Even if they're not real people, are under the impression that that's an unpopular opinion for you to have. You might even second guess yourself and say maybe you were wrong, maybe the movie actually was good and you just have bad taste in movies. Granted, a movie is not like that deep. I'm an elite level hater, so if a movie's popular, I'm automatically gonna dislike it. But social issues are more complicated and psychologically affected by your peers. So this is how massive amounts of bot accounts work together as a system to change the overall Overton window of an entire society in some cases. If incendiary politicized content is showing up on everyone's feeds more and more and more often, it is going to gradually shift the entire society window of discourse. And also, not for nothing, a recent report from the University of Notre Dame suggests that participants in the study were incorrect over 58% of the time when they were asked to identify if a post was written by AI or by a real human. So that's just a little bit about the mechanics of how these internet bots are even able to have an actual impact on the discourse of our society in general. But now let's take a look at how specifically Israel is using this type of technology to fuel a genocide. So now the main news article that I'm using for reference is from Haaretz, which is an Israeli newspaper, and is very obviously a pro-Zionist bias going on here. But the information is still very relevant and interesting, even though they are trying to frame it as if it's to counter anti-Semitism. And they are still telling on themselves in this article. So let's take a look. So Haaretz reports that the state of Israel had purchased a mass online influence system, which the Israeli newspaper describes as being able to automatically create content tailored to specific audiences. So this is seen as Israel's response on the so-called digital front, using large language model bot technology to counter critics of Israel who Haaretz claims undercut the rationale behind the war and the IDF spokesperson's credibility, specifically among younger audiences in the West. Definitely using some loaded words there and some bullshit. But aside from all this loaded language and excruciatingly obvious biased claims, such as that this has nothing to do with the war effort, like, okay. It's a little insulting that they would even add that. But regardless of that, the information being reported on in this article is very interesting nonetheless, and it raises some pertinent questions. Like, do money and power buy artificial support? And if that's the case, which appears evident, then is this a just society? It's definitely worth discussing, if nothing else. But that's part of the problem, right? The discussion that we're having right now largely takes place online. How can we even have a fair and honest and open discussion if the platforms that we're having this discussion on are controlled by the rich and powerful? On a platform where influence can be bought and sold. So as the internet proceeds to be relentlessly privatized and monopolized by social media conglomerates and billionaire tech moguls, it becomes self-evident that the legitimacy and ethical permissibility of such a system in which money and power can blatantly purchase mass influence over one of the primary means of modern communication must, at some point, start to be questioned. When taking into account the very real demonstrable possibilities of AI's impact on public opinion, it becomes hard to imagine that it's not being abused. Those select few who do hold enough power and affluence to manipulate the entire narrative cannot be trusted to do so in a way that is ethical, sustainable, and responsible.